With the invention of the internet, most people's lives changed. It got to the point where almost everyone I knew wanted a computer. A couple of years ago, we finally joined the computer generation and decided to buy one. At first, it was the new toy in the house. Deb, my wife, used it for email and games. The kids, Kyle and Kayla, used it for games and homework. I, on the other hand, used it for internet searches and pornography. I often stayed late at work. I worked the second shift and left the factory at midnight. I didn't want to go to bars like a lot of guys. After all, I was married. So I always headed home. Everyone would already be asleep, and I would sit down at the computer. After a while, the same old stuff got boring. I never really became addicted like some people, but I started visiting story websites and reading about everything imaginable. I couldn't believe most of what I read. Do people really do these things, or are they just fantasies? I was hooked by the stories of cheating wives. All these women were cheating on their husbands. It was hard to believe, but those stories planted ideas. I found myself watching Deb's actions when we went on dates. I would comment that she was dancing too close to another man or being too friendly. We even argued about it. I knew she was a good-looking woman, but I had no reason not to trust her. Still, I started searching through the clothes hamper and going through our emails. Silly stuff. After reading those stories, I started thinking things that I wouldn't have otherwise. I remember reading about men who caught their wife with another man and stood there watching. I had to ask myself, would that ever turn me on? Given my jealousy, I didn't think so. I told Deb about some of these thoughts. She asked me why I was even thinking that way. She didn't want any other man but me. I met Deb in our 20s at her sister's wedding. We danced, became friends, started dating, and married about a year later. The next year, we had Kyle, and 2 years after that, Kayla. Deb's sister, Sandy, was the wild one. In high school, she slept around. Everyone knew it. I wasn't proud of my past either. I had done things I wasn't proud of. Sandy married Bob, a day shift supervisor I knew from work. Bob was wild too. I didn't like him much. I thought he hit on Deb after our wedding. I told Deb if he tried anything, I'd deal with it. We agreed to never talk about our pasts. We were both jealous, and we wanted that behind us. One morning, Deb asked if I could stop by Sandy's house and fix a leaking sink on my way to work. I laughed at the word plumbing, but said I'd stop by. She kissed me, and the kids left for school. Sandy was a part-time cashier, and it happened to be her day off. When I arrived, she was wearing a sexy bathrobe. She offered coffee and showed me the sink. It was a simple clog. Eggshells and potato peels had packed the disposal. I lay on my back under the cabinet and reassembled the siphon. As I finished, Sandy leaned on me. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Stop it, Sandy. I'm trying to finish this job." She stepped forward, and before I fully processed what was happening, she said, "Are you going to sleep with me now?" "No," I said. "Deb is your sister." "I love her." "I won't cheat on her, especially not with her sister." I told her I loved Deb and that I wouldn't do it. Sandy laughed and threatened that she'd tell Deb I had slept with her anyway. I grabbed my tools, left, and drove to work with my head spinning. At work, I tried to concentrate, but I couldn't. I called Deb and left a message. "I love you, and I have something to tell you about your sister tonight." She wasn't home. Later, she and Sandy left, with the kids staying with me. Deb called and said they'd be back later. I waited anxiously. When I pulled up to the house that night, Sandy's car was in the driveway. I went in and the door was locked. I used the key, and what I saw in the living room knocked the breath out of me. Deb was on the couch looking half scared and drunk. Sandy sat holding her hand. Bob was there pulling up his pants. I didn't feel anything sexual. I felt sick and furious. I attacked Bob. I hit him hard. I must have hit him 5 times before something struck the back of my head. I woke up in the hospital. A patrolman told me I had a concussion from being hit with a glass vase. The police had been called. I might have been charged with assault, but the charges were dropped. The officer said, "Witnesses claimed I came home and started fighting with Bob, and when they intervened, Sandy hit me with a vase to stop the fight. Where was my wife?" According to witnesses, she had been throwing up and couldn't remember much. She said she didn't remember details. I knew then I couldn't tell the world I had caught my wife in bed with another man. I lay there without saying anything. The doctor said I had to stay overnight and think about what I'd done. I was lucky. The officer told me I could have faced up to 18 months. The next morning, I called Deb. She told me Sandy said I had forced her to have sex. I told her the truth. I had gone to fix a sink. Sandy hit on me. I left. Then I found Deb in the house with Bob. She didn't believe me. Deb came back to the house later. In tears, she told me Sandy told her I had raped her. I swore it wasn't true. I told Deb I had fixed the sink and left. She accused me of lying. The argument spiraled. Deb said she had sex with Bob to get even, because she believed Sandy, and that Sandy had been trying to set us apart. The whole conversation became a tangle of accusations and recriminations. Deb said she did it to get even with me. I said I never raped Sandy, that she hadn't called the police because it didn't happen, but none of it mattered. She said the marriage was over. She would get a lawyer. We separated. I slept at a motel. I met with a lawyer and started divorce proceedings. Without proof, it was my word against Sandy's. Deb wanted the kids' stability, and everything was split nearly 50-50. I paid child support willingly. I loved my kids and missed them terribly. I tried to stay present for school events and birthdays. I saw the kids every weekend, but Deb's family believed Sandy. That cut me deeper than anything. One afternoon, while watching Kyle, Sandy called and taunted me. I recorded the call on our answering machine. She admitted they were swingers, she egged things on, and she said Debbie had gone along with Bob willingly, that I had only stirred things up. Then Deb called. She apologized. Sandy had told her the truth. Sandy admitted there had been no rape, but Deb said it didn't change anything. She couldn't forget that sex had happened with Bob. She said she loved me and hated me. She still wanted a divorce, and she had already signed papers. I got drunk and went to a bar. I saw Bob and cold punched him. I beat him until men pulled me off. The police arrived, arrested me, and I was sent to jail. I pleaded guilty to assault and received 2 years minus time served. Prison was a different world. I fought and got cut up. I had to prove myself. My cellmate was a lifer called Killer, a man who had murdered his wife and another inmate. He was terrifying. Months into my sentence, Deb came to see me. She brought pictures of the kids and tearfully told me she had made a terrible mistake. She said she no longer saw Sandy or Bob. She promised to wait for me and begged me to forgive her. I felt conflicted. I still loved her, but I couldn't trust her. I left the visit and walked back to my cell. Killer surprisingly gave me advice. Don't hold a grudge. It will eat you alive. He told me about his daughter and how he regretted his past. The words stuck with me. A short while later, Amy, my sister and best friend, told me she saw Sandy and Bob entering Deb's house. I was devastated. Had Deb lied again? I couldn't be sure. Killer told me he used to be a lawyer and might be able to pull strings to help get me out on parole. He did some work, and I was granted a parole hearing. I told the board I'd have a place to stay with Amy and could return to my old job. They said they'd consider it, and weeks later I was told I would be released. When I walked out of that gate, Amy was waiting. She hugged me, and I felt grateful to have family who believed me. After my release, Amy told me Deb had signed divorce papers while I was in prison. I was free but emotionally wrecked. I called Deb and asked to see the kids. She agreed to let me visit, but warned she would call the police if I caused a disturbance. When I arrived, the kids ran to me and hugged me. I told them I was living with Aunt Amy and hoped to find a place closer soon. Deb and I argued. She accused me of not trusting her and of making threats about the people she associated with. I told her I would fight to protect our children from that lifestyle. She said she had tried it, but it wasn't for her. She insisted she had changed. Days later, I went to the law firm that had handled my parole and my case. It felt strange to deal with lawyers who had quietly guided my release. The parole board saw that I had a place to live, a job waiting, and family support. They granted my parole. Killer's help, whether direct or indirect, had made a difference. When I walked out of prison the second time, Amy and her husband took me in. I visited the kids, tried to rebuild a presence in their lives, and planned to fight for custody if Deb's lifestyle ever endangered them. I still loved Deb, but the trust was shattered. The story had cost me everything: my marriage, my freedom, and months of my life. This is one man's messy, painful story about jealousy, betrayal, and the destructive power of rumors. It's about how small choices and lies can spiral into life-changing consequences. And it's about the difficulty, sometimes impossibility, of putting a family back together after trust is gone.